Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic for now, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew Neugebauer, and I'm coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It's election season here in Canada. Ritz dropped, whatever. As always, I'm joined from across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing in non-electoral land?
I'm good, actually. It's actually a pretty nice sunny day overall.
Nice.
Well, actually, there was a municipal election that's this month that I just sent in my ballot for.
Nice. There you go.
So there was
Also,
something going on.
there's something going on. Also, democracy never stops, just because it doesn't stop the ballot box for sure. There we go. Yeah. So speaking of governments and all that fun stuff, we're talking about villains this week. Specifically Sith, pirates, crime bosses, wannabe edgelords, corporatist oligarchs, stuffy Imperials, ever any survivors, and their not so furry pets. Star Wars has had its variety of villains, and each of them embodying different patterns and forces of darkness, pride, selfishness, and fear, sometimes with some genuine skepticism of central authority thrown in. This week, we are diving into the moral underside of the galaxy far, far away and uncover what these villains mean for the stories they find themselves in and the themes their creators are seeking to express. It's gonna be a fun conversation, good fun Lenten penitential conversation. There we go. I'm calling
I
it
was
that.
looking at the thumbnail, which I love, by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah.
But I just realized, unfortunately, I realized there weren't 7 villains. There's only 6. We could have had the 7 deadly sins.
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh, next time we'll get it next time. There we go. There we go. So yeah, we'll get to that. Get the plugs out of the way off the top. You can follow us on Blue Sky at Ion Cannon, also Instagram, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads still at Ion Cannon Pod, but mainly Blue Sky at Ion Cannon is where we normally reside these days on the social media world. Of course, Underworld Facebook, we're still there too, and check out all the Underworld socials at the SW as well. If audio is more your speed, if you prefer to listen to a podcast, as podcasting normally historically has been, we are definitely on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Ion Cannon podcast. Don't look at Ion Cannon. Those are our old streams. Ion Cannon podcast is the where you want to look for on Spotify and Apple. Also, we are proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld podcast network. Mentioning Star Wars Underworld here on the Star Wars Underworld. Yeah, I can speak, doing talking here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. We have memberships and we have super chats. See a bunch of chats already, and we will get to them for sure. I'm gonna even highlight that. We'll get to your comments for sure if you super chat us wherever we are in the conversation. We'll get to it immediately because we are grateful for any material support you can provide to the channel and the network, and of course through YouTube memberships as well. Last but not least, the Star Wars Underworld Discord server. Get in there, link in the description below. Hop in there, some great conversations, meeting some friends, meeting new folks, prep for celebration, prep for talk about Andor. There's definitely an Andor spoiler. Is there already an Andor spoiler channel? Probably is
Oh,
already.
actually, no, there isn't one. I
Oh, there
see.
isn't. There will be. There will be an Andor spoiler channel that I will mute, and then I will look at once I've seen the episodes. Is how you do it. There we go. Unless you like spoilers, then have at it. But there's
I
that.
might already have
And
it muted because I'm just going to change the Skeleton Crew spoiler channel
oh,
to
there we
include.
go. Yeah, that
So,
works. That works. So yeah, so please do check that out, and any events coming up in the Discord
oh
while
yes,
you. Oh,
there will be this week Friday we will have a movie night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will be watching the last 2 episodes of Andor, season 1.
nice, timely, very timely. We're gonna talk about Andor. Don't you worry. All right, two more plugs to get out of the way. Right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitch and Iron Cannon Twitch. We got the Tractor Beam Comics reviews. Yes, this is yeah, that should be right. Tractor Beam Comics reviews every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Chris Abbott and I break down the comic books that came out that day, that week, as well as an insider short story that came out a month ago that I finally picked up. That's okay. Going back to, of course, High Republic, and yes, High Republic, Fear of the Jedi #2, and Rise of Skywalker. That Jodie Hauser adaptation #2, and some news that we're also going to get into today. So please do check that out. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here. And then that's also on its own Spotify and Apple podcast feed for Tractor Beam Comics reviews. Comics are for Wednesdays, Wednesdays are for comics, etc. Last but not least, if you are going to the Pacific Coast party, even if the East Coast is the Pacific Coast in Japan, please do check out our friend Ash's panel, Senator Rebel Chancellor, who is Mon Mothma. And that goes Friday, April 18th at 4 p.m. on the fan stage, 4 p.m. local time on the fan stage. And I have heard they will try and get that up on YouTube on Ash's channel. So when that is up, we'll let you know. But also, of course, keep plugging that, because it looks fantastic. Our beloved Chancellor, our beloved Senator and Chancellor is having in her monasense, whatever you want to pronounce it. And so definitely check that one out. The biggest Mon Mothma fan you and I will ever meet is is doing that panel. So check that out. We're not done talking about Mon Mothma today. Just put that out there as well. I think that does it for the plugs. I think we got there. We'll pick those back up again at the end. I'll repeat them again at the end in case you missed it or in case you want it back again. We'll dive right in. Joel, you got a thought this week. Take it away.
I did have a thought. Funny enough, it's not the thought in the notes anymore, because I thought of something else
never mind.
I thought of today. But
All
it has something to do with Mask of Fear again.
Right.
I was thinking about what the very end of the book. So spoilers for the book. If you haven't read it. So
Yes.
leave now or forever hold your peace at the very beginning of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about.
We'll come back in a few minutes when he's done.
I was thinking about one of the more interesting lines of the book, where Mon Mothma just goes to Moth Maida and goes, "Does Palpatine believe in any of this stuff about law and order and blah 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 blah?" And I was thinking, Moth Maida goes, never thought to ask him. And I actually think that's really interesting, because I was thinking about Anakin the other day, today, about that, and it's like, I do think that for like maybe the first seconds of his dark side time before he gets all burnt up and just breaks, I think Anakin kind of does believe that this is the right thing. Like, Anakin's drinking the Kool-Aid of Chancellor Palpatine just wants to make the galaxy great again, Padme.
He's wearing the red hat.
Puts on the red cap.
Yep.
On the grassy knoll of Naboo. That's even like the line we both make fun of. People make fun of, but also it's kind of where he's in his little hive, like, you and I could change the galaxy. We can make things the way we want to. I think he legit believes in that stuff. I don't know. I think that's an interesting, and it's something we'll talk about when we get to the main topic. But here's a little taste of the topic of, Anakin kind of does, like, I think he does believe in, like, it's a little harsh, but Padme, it's gonna be worth it. Justice, truth, justice, the galactic empire way. I think that is just something I find. I'm thinking about that when it comes to like Darksiders and stuff like that. Like, oh yeah. Anakin kind of has this weird sense of justice. I even feel like with Vader, it never truly goes away. But I think Vader's just so broken at this point. I don't even think he's really thinking that deeply about it at that point, compared to maybe what Anakin was definitely doing there. But it's just an interesting thought of like those final moments in that book where Mon Mothma's like, does Palpatine even believe in any of this? I think the answer is obviously a big no. I don't think he does. Plague is actually, if you ever played Plague's book, I think he did generally believe in, yes, I'm doing this for the greater good of the galaxy. The galaxy must be ruled by enlightened beings, like myself.
Yeah. It's kind of elitism. Yeah.
Count Dooku honestly even believed in that too, or he's kind of very much I think maybe the Jedi should take a more harder approach. I don't think he believed necessarily himself, but he's like, well, if no one's going to do it, I'll step up. But Palpatine's a no. Vader kind of yes. but in a question, Kylo Ren, I don't even know what he thinks. I think he just thinks whatever on the day, right? It's like
Yeah.
he's just like, yes, the First Order is the right way. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Shut up. And
Yeah.
Snoke is Snoke.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. That's
Sorry.
where my mind went. At the beginning, at thinking this week, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I think that's just a very interesting thought of like, you do have true believers in the Empire, and then you have Palpatine, who's like a big no, and Masameda, who's probably also a no.
Or he just doesn't want to know the answer.
Or he just doesn't want to know the answer. That's
He
true.
just doesn't care. Yeah, it's and it kind of gets at the question that you did have in the notes: is when did the Empire truly form? Because, by the way, it just happens to work because there was this rising tide of Coruscant elitism that
Mhm.
was you definitely swirling. You got to be maybe not quite High Republic, but I mean, there were elites in the time of the High Republic, but that's the like I think I was saying this. I forget maybe I was saying this when we're talking about Mask of Fear,
Mhm.
or at some point. I forget when we're talking about this, but there was already this very strong tension between center and periphery. Yeah, I think it was when we're talking about Mask of Fear. We're talking about the separatists, right?
Right.
It's incredibly strong between center and periphery, and this kind of the sense of natural hierarchy that the wealthy elites were there because that is right and good, and that the poor dregs of the outer rim, well, too bad. And even if someone might not have articulated that explicitly, Palpatine just kind of says and does out loud what everyone was thinking. And the Empire says and does out loud what everyone's been thinking for decades and believing for decades. And so there's that question. Another interesting question, this is sort of tangential, is how much is Vader a believer in the Sith shtick, right? Because
Right.
Palpatine, for everything you want to say about him, he believes in the Sith shtick. He believes in uh the doesn't matter the good of the galaxy. The only good that matters is mine, and so I'm going to do what I can. What I can is considerable. Again, we'll get into this main topic with Vader. It's interesting because he does have this odd kind of immature, half baked political view when he's 19 or whatever. When he's 22, yeah, he wants to save Padme, and he's so stuck on that, and he feels betrayed by the Jedi. So to maybe answer your question, he is genuinely manipulated by Palpatine. Those are his real beliefs, real feelings that Palpatine is manipulating
Mhm.
and then selling him a bag of used goods. Interestingly, it takes Charles Soule's comic goes through this, with his failure to bring Padme back through his weird Momin castle thing. And then Kieran Gillen's comic, the first arc of the Kieran Gillen's comic.
Which I love. Big
Yeah,
top.
especially one of my top canon moments is that
Or number
crossover
one.
moment.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe it is my number one.
Oh, number one of all time. Number one in comics for me.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Just that whole when he realizes he has a son. It will be mine. It will all be mine. And to Palpatine, we understand each other completely. And I think that's almost what Palpatine wanted him to buy into the Sith thing, because that'll help Palpatine. But yeah, interesting questions. Interesting questions raised.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I'll just if you
Yeah.
wanted to know the answer to the old thought, I was going to say you can make the argument it's when Palpatine becomes the Chancellor, or a lot of people always say it's when the Clone Army gets officially part of the Republic, and that's
Yeah.
the end. That's the death in the nail.
When the
So
Clone Army gets raised, yeah.
yeah,
I'm sure Beaumont Kin has his opinion. I'm
sure
sure
he does.
Kitrin Braves has her opinion. Yeah, that'll be it. Now I want that debate. I want Beaumont Kin and Kitrin Braves to that's her name.
Well, we
The
can
in
definitely
universe
make that a discussion here for sure.
the in universe version of Kristen Baver. All right. Debate. when do you point the start of the Empire? There we go. All right, let's move right along. Speaking of the Empire, speaking of Mon Mothma, speaking of all that fun stuff, an Andor trailer number 2 dropped today. Dropped this morning, I should say. And it was this number 2 trailer. Of course, we are less than a month away from this fantastic show. Show that looks great, better and more relevant every moment. Yeah, and so it dropped this morning. Very, very gripping. Didn't really give us much in terms of plot details or any kind of wild reveals. I think the thing that stands out, Deidre getting force choked potentially. A lot more Krennic going on. Some more explicit Death Star moments there. So it's definitely feels a lot more Star Wars than Andor season 1 did, which it makes sense because it's becoming more and more part of the wider story, wider galaxy. Everything we've heard about Tony Gilroy talking about this, he's for someone who claims to not be a fan, he sure as Malachor takes this super seriously. And that's been his thing is to really take the universe seriously in order to make an authentic, honest story. I think I get the sense he's found a place to love, a way to love the story and love the universe, because it seems like you have to in order to, I don't not he's gonna probably be at Celebration only because he has to. He wouldn't be the kind of person to go on his own volition, but that'll be interesting when he gets that reaction at Celebration.
Well, he was in the last
He
celebration,
was the last Celebration, yeah.
and he quite liked it. I think he was enjoying himself. So.
Yeah. So because the fan love is always a big part of that. But yeah, it's definitely starting to look like it's going to give you and me and our guests a lot to talk about. So that I'm excited for. It's going to be continue to track in the deeper ideas that undergird George Lucas's universe and the galaxy far, far away, especially the way political organizations and political structures and norms function, especially in the Galactic Empire, and how to resist them and what it means to resist them in the Galactic Empire. I do remember Ellie's point being all Star Wars is going to Star War. So at some point, how relevant is a whole X-wings taking up or popping in a TIE interceptor going to be relevant to us? But there's still going to be themes and ideas that are going to speak to our current time. I do believe that. If anything, at the very least, things I'm going to read into it, I'm going to bring to it, because that is how we engage. The content is the audience, as Dr. McLuhan said. So, I'm looking forward to bringing those ideas and themes to this show, and I think it seems to be from this trailer what Tony Gilroy is hoping for, and what Diego Luna is hoping for, and Adria Arjona and everyone else is hoping for. So what did you think of this Andor trailer?
Oh yeah, very good. I've heard the alternative take of it might not be force choke. She just might be having a bad anxiety attack.
Yeah, maybe, or just adjusting her collar.
I mean, she might. I mean, true. I mean, she might be panicking. I mean, I think Deidre is not long for this world, either from a career point or from a life point.
Yeah.
So low key kind of hope Krennic maybe we be doing some trying to may undermine her. Like,
is she choking on her aspiration? Oh, I couldn't even finish that joke. Sorry.
Maybe.
Anyway, what do you think of this trailer?
No, it's interesting. I'm excited. It's definitely it's interesting. People are kind of already trying to maybe organize how the arcs are going to go down. Which will there be at least 4 of them, I think. Yeah,
there's the 4.
So maybe they're like gonna do the farm, the one that looks like in the farm, I believe number 1, then Gorman's number 2, then the Mon Mothma Senate number 3, and then Krennic 4. Which I get to actually see Krennic coming near the end, could kind of like really get closer to Rogue One. Which is also why I'm kind of also believe the anxiety attack thing, because I feel like Gilroy is really making this a prequel to Rogue One, and I think he really is following the rules of escalation.
Hmm.
and you don't bring in Darth Vader just yet. Because we're in the
Hmm.
middle. We're like, season 1, Andor, he's on the ground. He's really just dealing with
Yeah.
not even like the middle management, like the lower middle management.
Hmm.
Then Krennic coming in shows like, okay, now like the upper middle management is coming in.
Sure.
And then when you get to Rogue One, where it's like, oh shoot, now like the big stuff is going down.
Hmm.
Now the Empire needs to bring in the big heavies to
Yeah.
take care of this. And this is when Darth Vader's like, time to take care of business. Get my lightsaber.
Yeah.
And then obviously New Hope. Um, so yeah, there's that. Although I'm still crossing my fingers. Come on, Tony, for a Masameda cameo. I want to see at
Yeah.
least Masameda in the Senate. I don't need to see Palpatine in the Senate. I still feel like Palpatine wouldn't care.
Sure.
He's like, yeah, I don't care about Mama. I got Sith stuff to do. Let Masameda deal with it. So that'd be fun. Cool to see Saw on Jeddah. We're gonna see him in his Jeddah base in the
Hmm.
final. Look like he's on his little Jeddah base.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the Jeddah base. I think you can even see the city in the background.
Possibly, I did look closely enough.
Um,
Sorry.
so that's cool. I'm curious to see what Krennic's up to. I miss Krennic. I love Krennic. He's
Mm-hmm.
fun. Yeah, and like you said, there's not much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of like the story and where it's going. Here's an interesting question. I don't want to make this too much a derail of Andor, but there's a theory going around that Luthen and Cassian sparked the Gorman massacre. Like, basically,
Interesting.
Luthen sees this big protest. It's not like they're actually firing into the crowds, but they are like, when it's a large protest, Luthen's like, okay, shoot a stormtrooper, because the stormtrooper going to then react violently,
Yeah.
and then that's going to really get people, to realize, oh shoot. And this is something we talked about in the Daughter of the Ferrex Discord. Is
Yeah.
all the Gorman people are humans, right? They're all humans. There's no
Mm.
aliens.
Right.
And I think that's important because if the people of the galaxy see Stormtrooper just mowing down humans, I think that's going to be a big wake up call because it's like, if to quote the real world, be like seeing the cops like, wait a minute, the cops in the army are shooting white people. They're not supposed to do that. They're only supposed to shoot the
Yeah.
people who aren't white. So, which in the Star Wars case is aliens.
Right.
Aliens equal the not white people. So it's like the humans like, hey, wait a minute. You can shoot the aliens, but you can't shoot the humans. We're the
Yeah.
humans. We're supposed to be. We got that human privilege.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh wait, and they're like, oh shoot, if the Empire can do that, they might come after me.
Yeah.
Oh no. So I think that Luthen's always kind of been about we gotta make people wake up and realize the Empire is gonna cause you pain. So we gotta make them cause you pain.
Mhm.
And that could be like the big thing in
Mhm.
the Gorman arc is like Luthen kind of wants a massacre to happen to shake people out of their complacency.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
that's a theory. It could be wrong. That's a theory that's going on.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious to kind of see also where all the Rogue One characters end up, because we know what's going to
Mhm.
happen to Andor and Mon, obviously. Andor's going to die in Rogue One. Mon's going to live to see the New Republic and
One's gonna
retire.
live forever.
Mon's going to live forever. But what about
Mhm.
what is going to happen to Luthen and to Bix and
Mhm.
to Roscoe and to BD?
Mhm.
What's going to happen to all of them? So very
Yeah.
curious to see how those stories wrap up. But yeah, we're
Yeah.
almost there. We're almost there. I'm
We're almost
excited.
there. Just under a month to go. Yeah. I mean, Bix isn't in Rogue One at all. Obviously, I mean, the
Well and
character probably hadn't been created yet, but
true.
that's a question that we're gonna have to answer or have to get an answer for.
Mhm,
So as in a tragic, gripping story answer
mhm,
potentially. Yeah, that's interesting with the Gorman massacre. I was thinking about. I mean, well, the main thing that's how what happens after Alderaan, obviously.
mhm,
Uh, I mean, even like Vardos in Operation Cinder. You know, to say it backfires in the sense of the Empire can do that to one of its most beloved planets. It can do that to anybody.
mhm.
And so, I mean, that was the point, but yeah, they're kind of like, yeah, why Ukraine at first got more sympathy than Palestine, for example, right? And
Pretty
that's,
much.
or, anywhere in, DRC or wherever, um, or Columbia, or who knows what. So, yeah, that would track. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if that would almost cheapen it a little bit. Because it would also say, "Oh, Luthen's not a good guy either." Then, right? Like kind of the questions we have with Saw, we'd have with Luthen, which would be interesting if it's executed well. But I don't know.
I mean, I trust Tony Gilroy to execute it well, so
Yeah,
I wouldn't
it
be
just
worried about
we
that.
know. I mean, we know that's what gets Mon Mothma to wake up. If she knows that Luthen, then that complicates things. I don't know.
We'll have to see.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's certainly something. Maybe not. I mean, maybe
it's
not.
possible.
It's possible. Maybe not. I
Yeah,
actually am genuinely curious what happens to Luthen though, because he either dies
yeah,
because that's just what happens to any character who's not in the movie. We just assume they're dead.
yeah.
Or
Or out in Perdia.
I'm pretty. Or maybe Luthen is like just decides it's time to just fade into the background now. My task is done. It's time now to let the rebellion has now become legit.
Hmm.
Time for the Luke Skywalkers of the world to
Yeah,
take over from me. Or maybe he offs himself. Maybe he unalives himself. Maybe he's like it's time to maybe
kind of
he
like how Saw.
kind of like Saw, but maybe he does a little bit more because he's not that unhealthy body wise.
Yeah,
But I can see that where it's like
true.
he and Saw are kind of realizing our time's over. It's time to
Yeah.
let the kids deal with this.
Hmm. So, clearly we have lots to talk about with this show. So we're thinking about how to devote more time than just the usual 5-minute eyes on screen. Because yeah, this is gonna give us stuff to talk about. This is gonna stuff to think about. So stay tuned when the show drops in again less than a month away. There we go. But we do have a bit of news, bit of comics news to go into. Two comic book stories that Chris and I will also go into on Tractor Beam, but we'll mention them now. First up, Chelly's back, baby. That's right. Collider's reporting that Dr. Aphra Chaos Agent #1 is written by Cherish Chen, art by Gabriel Guzman, and we'll show this cover by EJ Sue. It is, yeah, so they announced, yeah, on Collider, and of course also on Marvel.com. This is from the Collider article, set to follow Aphra as she teams up with none other than Luke Skywalker in a race to track down a rare artifact. However, the biggest twist may come from Aphra herself. Her signature tattoos, which have always played a vital role in her survival and scheming, no longer function. The issue hits. Oh, sorry. Issue #1. I did have my decaf, I promise. Issue #1 hits your local comic book shop on June 18th. So yeah, there's the cover by EJ Sue. It's interesting mention of the tattoos because those don't actually seem to play all that much of a role that often. I think with the Ascendant, the oh goodness, the that head honcho Ascendant, I forget what it's called. That was, yeah, that there was some connection there, and of course uh with the Scourge, yeah, the Scourge in Dark Droids, little bit of a connection there, but by and large, it's interesting they mentioned that that's a big twist. I don't know. I mean, I think the most interesting thing, oh sorry guys, is the fact that she's teaming up with Luke, as I thought. And of course, this is set after battle, probably after the Battle of Jakku. No, definitely after Battle of Jakku. Set after Alex Segura's Battle of Jakku comic book. So the year after Endor. And yeah, after she's, of course, after Alyssa's trademark landmark run of Chelly. And so yeah, Chaos Agent, but Luke has asked her to come and help. And the at the end of the Alyssa Wong run, Chelly's kind of woken up. She's seen that she needs to actually care about a galaxy that's bigger than herself and what she can get. Even we see that through the Alex Segura run in her cameo, and that she actually helps Luke out and figures out that something's a fake or something. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a new phase for her. It's a new interesting phase of how to still be a chaos agent, but good, lawful, chaotic, or whatever,
Got it
whatever
good.
the
That's
yeah,
D&D people talk.
chaotic good as opposed to chaotic neutral
Neutral.
or chaotic evil, chaotic neutral. Yeah, so that'll be an interesting question. See what happens there. What are your thoughts on Chelly coming back there, Joel?
Oh, I love the fact she's teaming up with Luke. They make
Mhm.
such a fun platonic
They
friendship.
do. They do.
Um, you know, where it's just like here's like Scout's honor, Luke Skywalker, and here's
Mhm.
Chelly with a chip on her
Shoulder.
shoulder, shoulder that even more than Han.
Yeah.
At some point. And I just think it's hilarious.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm glad to see. I mean, I think we all knew this was going to happen, right? Like, I don't think any of us didn't think this was going to happen. So it's
Yeah.
nice to see this. It's going to be interesting to see this kind of her explore this timeline, see her
Mhm.
perspective of this part of the galaxy, and Luke, Han, and Leia mainline kind of deal with more
Mhm.
the bigger galactic implications. She can deal with more just the weirder, smaller scale stuff, mystic
Mhm.
arts and whatnot. Maybe help Luke find the sacred Jedi text or some
Nice.
Jedi stuff. That'd be fun. Yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. Do you think that this is also a sign that we're gonna get maybe a bounty hunter and then have all three kind of back for the new era, or is it just gonna be Luke, Han, Leia for the main line, and Afra as her own thing, doing her own adventures?
That's a good question. So as we'll talk about in a minute, and we know Byler is going to be in the main ongoing run.
Mhm.
So is Luke, which Luke's going to be one of the headliners. So there's going to be that kind of crossover. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it depends on if there's a story to tell. I mean, there always is a story to tell with those. Because I mean, Tonga, Lasha, the Hedgehog crew, they're still going around. They're still doing their thing. Kira's still alive.
Oh yeah.
So so maybe. It's just it's a different time where that central authority is this kind of feeble, kind of figuring things out new republic that's trying to actually build a democratic society and rebuild a democratic government. And so in that light, the bounty hunters, the underworld is a bit more morally suspect, whereas under the Empire, they could be more heroic. That's always something that I wonder with the Mandalorian is like, he thinks the Republic is a joke, doesn't really get involved. We haven't really seen the New Republic story much. I
That's
think we're
Ahsoka.
about to.
That's the New Republic story.
Yeah, Ahsoka a little bit, but even then they're kind of getting in her way and getting in Hera's way. Um, you have folks like Ziono doing his thing, civilian oversight, sure. But um this will be a different angle. Again, similar to what I was saying, right? Chelly, she can't just keep looking out for number one because there are folks around to help her now. So that
Oh,
cynicism, the chip on her shoulder, isn't necessarily going to be uh as helpful there.
and I
One
forgot
last thought.
one more
No,
thought
you go ahead.
about
Okay,
this
you go
because
ahead.
I forgot because it's important.
Mm,
I need this discussion. I need this discussion in the comic.
mhm.
At Dr. Afra, Lord Vader, father is
Yeah.
dead, and I had such a brilliant spiritual experience. Afra's reaction is just, "Woo! He's dead. He's dead."
Maybe.
And then like, oh,
Yeah.
right, Luke, the happiness thing. Yeah, that's good for you. I don't really care. I'm just glad I finally don't have to deal with him anymore.
Well, yeah, that's more reasonable that she doesn't have to deal with him. But yeah, that's interesting that this is another connection Luke has to his father. So that'd be interesting. So
I was his
yeah,
sidekick for a couple of adventures together.
yeah. So we'll see. Cherish Chen. Uh, I did just look this up. Only known new to Star Wars, I believe. I don't believe she's done a Star Wars book. The only thing, something called Radiant Red, which is an Image book. So I believe that was for Image, or yeah, for Image. So creator owned. So
Nice.
that's cool. Going kind of the mining the indie route to bring into this massive corporate sandbox. Why not?
And
So
also good to get some Chinese American
yeah,
writers in there for
yeah,
Afra, who's
another
always been Asian coded.
yeah. So this will be again the second, oh, I guess a third Chinese American or Asian American to write Afra. You consider include Sarah Kuhn, who wrote that audio play.
That's true.
So yeah, I believe. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, looking forward to this one again, June 18th. Check it out. Definitely check it out on the Tractor Beam. We will be sure to dive into that as well. One last bit of comics news. Remove that. Last bit of comics news. Alex Segura talk previewing his ongoing run in 2025. He spoke to his ongoing 2025. It's called. He spoke to comicbook.com and previewing it. Did a bit of an interview. I included some interior art by Phil Noto. I admit I haven't had a chance to read this thing in depth in full, but we do show a bit of interior art here. Joel, you take it away if you want me to. Do you want me to show this art now,
Yeah,
or you have
you can
any
show. Yeah,
thoughts?
go ahead, show the art.
So we have some interesting art here.
Yeah.
By Phil Noto.
We have Luke here with a squadron of X-wings heading to the planet.
With
And
rings.
X-wings.
Yep.
With wings.
Well, the planet has rings too.
Oh, it does.
Yep. That's what I'm pointing out.
Oh, cool. But anyway, my when I saw this, I guess my first thought was, huh, interesting. What's interesting about it is like, I kind of always assumed that after Return of the Jedi, Luke was like, you know, all right, New Republic, I'm gonna go form the Jedi Order. Call me if you need me. I'm kind of a free agent at this point, though.
Mhm.
Peace. Do solemn thing. But here it looked like he's got a whole squadron. Either he's commanding it or he's part of the group.
Mhm.
Looks like he's on official, maybe New Republic business of a sort. I don't
Mhm.
know. And I'm just kind of curious, like, oh, what is Luke's relationship with the New Republic right now? Is this like, is he
Mhm.
just doing an assignment for them? Did he ask Leia, hey Leia, I need help. Can you give me a squadron of X-wing, please? Thank you. My lost my buddy Mama. I help you. You help me. He's in his X-wing uniform. He probably was maybe Wedge is there. I hope maybe Wedge and some of the
Yeah.
gang are there. That'd be fun. Are these just his buddies who decide to help Luke because they want to do him a favor?
Mhm.
What's going on here? Why is Luke with a squadron? I mean, I'm glad Luke's not
Yeah.
alone, but at the same time, it's like, this looks like he's more on official government business.
Yeah, it's true. He's more still part of the New Republic military hierarchy or whatever, if there as such as it exists. Is a squadron called Rogue,
Yeah.
Rogue Squadron. In which case Wedge Antilles would be, I mean, going from Legends, Wedge Antilles would be the commander. But yeah, who knows? I mean, Luke was definitely the commander of Rogue Squadron. And so yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it is kind of a striking image to see him in the orange flight suit and in that helmet, that iconic helmet, at this time period. It's true. What's he going on? What's going on? What's he up to? There we go. Another image I wanted to look at, of course, that is most likely Chandrila, and that is Mon Mothma and Leia, and that's got to be what's his face at the bottom there.
Adelhard.
Yeah, that guy. So we might be talking about the events of the Alex Segura's run, year long, or the Battle of Jakku run. It'll be interesting because that one was released so quickly. If some details don't get missed, if we remember some details, they're very fascinating. Yeah, that we're, like I said, finally getting more of this Mon Mothma New Republic story that we just haven't gotten. That, to be fair, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni just aren't that interested in telling this story as much. Maybe it isn't that interesting of a story, and or seemingly being a more relevant story to have the more cynical government story. But Star Wars has its, dare I say it, room for a federation, if you will, right? High Republic being the prime example now. This is going to be interesting. I mean, maybe there'll be some references to High Republic in this, saying, "Remember back when we were a functioning democracy," So curious to see that. Curious to see what Leia is, what they're talking about, what they're doing here. The struggles to continue to build a government, even transition from a rebellion to a government, one that the good chunk of the galaxy believes is legitimate and has the legitimate claim on. Um, is there? Well, that's the thing. Leading up to all the way up to Bloodline, question of
Mhm.
is a hegemonic claim, or is there more the populist faction and more kind of federative mediation between a Chandrila government or whatever Hosnian Prime or wherever it is, and the planets, local planets? Because again, that was the thing with the Empire, was it's all Coruscant all the time. So um yeah, it's interesting again what the tensions are, because we know the tension is within Leia's own heart and mind, right? She's struggling to transition. And ultimately, I mean, looking ahead to the sequel trilogy, can she ultimately transition? Does she ultimately transition when there's this looming threat on the horizon in the First Order,
Mhm.
which is also, their stirrings also starting here already. So, yeah, very fascinating political conversation. I'm trying to see what else we
Well,
have
I
here.
mean,
And we have Luke on the
Leia.
um, Luke on the Death Star there. We have Jakku. Yeah, we have Adelhard. Um, but yeah, interesting,
What they're
these
talking
guards
about.
on Chandrila there. So,
Oh,
uh, so good.
I mean, maybe Leia's like more concerned they're not taking a harder approach on any
Yeah,
Imperial remnants, and they got to they got to
maybe.
hunt them down, find them. Who knows? I
Hmm.
do feel like I remember somewhere they said that one of the arcs was going to be Leia dealing with like a bunch of planets who don't want to join the New Republic.
Yeah,
Uh, maybe some separatist worlds.
maybe.
That's
Yeah,
possible. And I
that'd
do
be
remember like
interesting
one.
seeing if we see Sereno.
That'd be fun. Maybe I mean, I'm curious what
Hmm.
these three little
Hmm.
flashbacks are all about. Look, Leia's got that very stern look, so
Hmm.
maybe she's a little bit more paranoid about the future.
Hmm.
So yeah, that'll be cool. I can't wait for May. Is it
Hmm.
May? Okay, cool.
Yeah, sorry, May 7th.
Awesome. Can't wait for May
Yes.
7th.
Gonna be fun. All right. Yes. Again, check out the Tractor Beam. We'll definitely have that one going. And we'll talk about it on Tractor Beam on Wednesday. All right. I think we got through the news. I think we're there. Uh Villains in Star Wars. Take it away, Joel.
Villains, it's our house now. It's our house now. All right, villains. Star Wars villains are some of the
Mhm.
best villains in the history of pop culture, right next to the Disney villains and the Batman Rogue Gallery and Spider-Man Rogue Galaxy too.
There you
They are great. They are fun. Um, and there are a lot of them.
go.
So we're gonna here talk about you know as Star Wars moves into the future and past, wink. What kind of
Mhm.
villain Star Wars could deal with? What
Mhm.
kind of what sort of how the villain should be written? What's their motivations? What do they represent? And
Mhm.
all of that good stuff. So I think to begin the conversation, we should scale back and
Mhm.
think about where Star Wars always begins with an archetype. And Star Wars villains have fallen into several types, which I have listed below in my notes.
Mhm.
Keep in mind, folks, that sometimes these archetypes can mission match, but I think
Yeah, there's got to be overlap. Yeah.
For Star Wars simplicity, I think this is how I would organize them. We got Darksiders, fascist, pirates, criminals, mega corporations, and other.
Yeah.
Um, we got, Palpatine and Vader. They represent the Darksiders. You got your fascists like your Thrawn and your Tarkin and your Krennic.
Hmm.
You got your pirates like Jod. Um, you got your mega corporations like Nute Gunray. And then you got your criminal crime bosses like Jabba the Hutt. So we
Yeah.
have all these types of villains in the Star Wars galaxy. They've all we've at least seen one of them in at least one of the movies and one of the shows.
Hmm.
And I think
And the books and the
and
comics.
the
Of course.
books and the comics, of course.
This guy.
Yeah, this guy. He's also on the thumbnail.
Yes.
Tried to get at least one of each. And
Mhm.
I think it.
Mhm.
I guess the question I think is interesting is, as Star Wars moves into the future, which we know we are,
Mhm.
what types of villains will Star Wars sort of show? To kind of mix it up a little bit. The original, the sequel trilogy, obviously, kind of being Bart throwback, kind of a little bit of throwback. He gave us our typical fascist and Darksiders, with the First
Mhm.
Order, and Snoke and the Emperor and Kylo Ren, and Hux and Pride
Mhm.
and all those good guys. But now that those guys are gone,
Mhm.
what will Rey and her new Jedi Order face? Will they face another Empire? Will
Mhm.
they face more Darksiders? Will they face just outright terrorists? Will like a mega corporation be the villain?
Mhm.
It's sort of interesting to think about what archetype Star Wars will kind of pick from a hat.
Mhm.
And maybe they'll do some mix and mingling. Obviously, you could have mega corporation CEO who's also a Darksider. Um,
Mhm.
but it'll be interesting to kind of see which they choose next. So, but I'll toss it to you, Matthew.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about the archetypes of villains that Star Wars has had over its many long years?
So, I mean, well, the thing that I always come to this, these archetypes are manifestations of themes that the artist, the creator is trying to express, right? Um, especially in our real world. I mean, the the dark side overall, just, fear, and fear leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, right? Or
Hmm.
the other way around. I don't know. Um,
Fear leads
yeah,
to anger. Anger leads to
fear,
hate. Hate leads to suffering.
yeah, that one, my favorite movie. It's okay. Um, that fear, anger, the grasp for power run amok, and then yeah, you have uh totalitarian governments, and those who are consumed by it, and those who are trying to operate it. Then you have the other extreme, right? You have the, again, marking. You have the Nile, and the folks who just want complete autonomy to do whatever they want. Um, well, I guess it's both. It's two sides of the same coin, right? It's complete autonomy to do whatever they want using the instruments of power, complete autonomy to do whatever they want by distancing themselves and separating themselves out of the instruments of power to create their own little power base. Of course, on Hetzel, uh, Markian's hanging out there eating his chicken, playing with his dogs out
Yeah.
there on Hetzel, in phase 3 at least. Behind the storm wall, which is another aspect to this, right? Just this secessionism is this, this theme in Star Wars where the legitimate grievance boils over into, we don't want to play fair, we don't want to play nice. I mean, with the separatists, of course, it's the mega corporations there, and so of course the
Greed and
influence. I mean, the prequels, the villain of the prequels is the influence of money in government, and the way fear and pride, and consolidating the consolidating force can pull those levers, uh and so to just continue to consolidate power, right? I mean, that's the thing. Palpatine, no, it's no wonder that the separatists are the bad guys, because they're the ones that Palpatine is using kind of maybe most ardently, or at least the thing that George wanted to say, the alarm bells that George wanted to say about the way corporate power ironically leads to consolidation. And so, if we're not, this whole the myth of capitalism, that it's about freedom and liberty, you know financial exchange, commercial exchange, it can be, but if it becomes the point of society, then it tends toward consolidation. So the yeah a that that all that tracks. I don't know if I would I add any, um you know yeah, I guess, I guess that's pretty fairly comprehensive. I mean, I'm sure there's more. I mean, there does get to this question. I'll bring this question up now. about Hondo and pirates, because pirates, like I was saying with say the Edgehawk crew, like bounty hunters, they can go back and forth, and they can be more heroic, and depends on in the face of the Empire. Uh, Pirates, they want freedom. They want to be able to do what they want, and if the Empire is going to keep them from doing what they want, then they might end up helping the rebellion and being infected with this sense of the common good and for the wider galaxy. And so they can get reformed, be reformed pirates, if you will. And I mean, even Din Djarin, if you're when Carson Teva first meets him, Din Djarin to Carson Teva is a villain because he's running from the law, right? Causing trouble and bounty hunter. So it can be more up in the air, but yeah, definitely there definitely are the archetypes, and they do keep coming up. Question about what kind of villain will Rey encounter? I'd be interested. Maybe this kind of falls under pirates a little bit. The indifferent. We're in a very indifferent time, or at least how indifference has led to the rise of Mr. Orange. The voter turnout is the lowest it's ever been, probably, at least in terms of eligible voters. That sense, lack of efficacy, lack of people caring, and so I'll be curious to see that, because maybe that's, again, it's part of pirates, kind of Din Djarin's whole the New Republic is a joke kind of idea. Yeah, if Rey and Poe and Finn and whoever else are actually trying to rebuild the galaxy, aren't people who just want to go back to their farm and are tired of caring and having to worry about whoever is in charge of the galaxy. And that, of course, is what Palpatine used. That'll maybe be what some other, probably dark side force will use, but maybe just like at the end of Rise of Skywalker, right? Rey's role will be to rally the galaxy to come together again.
I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the future story?
No,
so
but
that's always that's definitely. But yeah, that could be interesting. I remember an old idea. I remember years somebody said that apparently the Knights are one of like the original ideas for like the villains of the sequels, were the Knights of Ren, were basically, what if space pirates found a bunch of holocrons and became Sith Lords?
Interesting.
That's like an old idea. I don't even know if it's true or not. That was just an idea I heard once. Yeah. As for the question of Hondo, yeah, I mean it's an interesting one. I would say kind of depends on the arc, because some arcs there's a definitive 100% yes, and other times no. And then by the time you get to Star Wars Rebels, probably definitely not. So Hondo's definitely someone who kind of had a bit of an arc. Or some people would argue maybe more of a justification. It got a little more jokey. But but then you got Jod, who's he's a pirate, and he clearly was the bad guy in Skeleton Crew by the end.
Yeah.
So even criminals to a certain extent, like Kira's a criminal, but yet Kira fought the Empire and didn't want them around. Maul's also technically a criminal too, and he's still also a dark sider. Again, that mix and mingle kind of thing. Where Palpatine's also a dark side fascist. So that's a bit more in the gray area, but certainly, yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on what the goals are. You kind of got criminals with hearts of gold. I mean, that's what Han is. But I mean, Han just joins the rebellion at that point.
Yeah.
Kira never does. I don't even know what Kira would have done if she actually succeeded. She doesn't, and she just kind of goes off. Kind of waits to see the end, and she does.
Yeah.
So hooray for her. I don't know if she'll get back to crime, or she'll just kind of like live life on a farm. So
Kira's also a reluctant criminal.
That's true.
That's part of it.
She just wants to be left alone and free to do what
Mhm.
she wants. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, so there's that. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're right. Din now with a bounty hunter who's gonna take private contracts from Carson Teva and hunt down Imperials.
Yeah.
Because he didn't, he took his first contract was for the Empire, and
Mhm.
when he were like, wait a minute, I don't want to hurt the baby. I like this baby. The
Yeah.
baby's cute.
Of
Then
the
he's like,
Imperial Remnant. Yeah.
to heck with the Empire. I'm out. Gonna find the baby a nice home.
Mhm.
Um, then he adopts the baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. I mean, hey, we'll get. Let's talk about how we write these villains and what defines a villain and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think there's something to remember, but Bo-Katan, she was a villain. She was
Yeah.
outright terrorist. She messed, with Death
Death
Watch.
Watch. Yeah.
Yeah, they did some nasty things in the Clone Wars.
Mhm.
Um, Ventress, another example, and hopefully maybe a character we'll see again real soon.
Yeah.
She was an outright villain, Darksider, then became a bounty hunter for a while, where she was kind of in that gray area
Mhm.
of not
Mhm.
good, but definitely done with Dooku and his what.
Yeah.
Um,
Chelly. We mentioned Chelly.
Jelly, she
Yeah.
worked for Vader.
Bad.
She
Yeah.
worked for Vader a couple times.
Yeah.
Not always against her own volition, but still.
Mhm. Mhm.
Although I wouldn't classify her as a full out villain because she never
Mhm.
antagonized anybody. At least
Yeah.
one of our heroes. And when she met Luke, she actually helped him. Um,
Mhm.
so that
Yeah.
gets them. But you know, I
Oh.
think when I talk about how we write these villains, Star Wars can either be very direct, and only recently I think been a little bit more nuanced than
Mhm.
villainy and the villain. So, you know, I'm going to say something again, my hot take with Joel Davis here.
There you go.
But if you watch Star Wars: A New Hope, and
Mhm.
if you erase from your mind anything of Star Wars before or after it from in the timeline, kind of get yourself back into a 1977 Star Wars headspace,
Okay.
there honestly isn't that much nuance to Vader. And what I
No.
mean by there's not much Vader
I'm
is
intended to take. I'm taking this
it,
down.
okay, and even Tarkin, right? Like Vader is.
No.
I mean, there's definitely some stuff there, Obi-Wan knew Vader, and but he killed Anakin, and that's why Vader and he
Yeah.
betrayed us, But outside of that, and a little bit of he believes in the Force,
Yeah.
he is kind of just a glorified henchman, and pretty much just straight up, oh yeah, he's a bad guy. Same with Tarkin,
Yeah.
Peter Cushing's performance makes us love him, but he's just the
Mhm.
stuck-up military man who believes in Death Star and order and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And then eventually you get the Emperor, and the Emperor is just evil incarnate. Anakin becomes more complicated when he becomes more of the hero, and George develops him for so much time.
Mhm.
But then the other prequel villains as well. Dooku's kind of just a mustache twirly villain. Grievous is all right, all full on a mustache twirly villain, and Nuke Gunray is I like money, and cowardly is viceroy
Yeah.
of the Kuwait Corporation. Um, it is not until really Kylo Ren, or when Kylo Ren shows up, first episode, you first oh, is he the new Darth Vader? But even then, it's that's where your family comes from. And then he takes off
Yeah.
the helmet. It's oh, wait a minute, he's Han's boy, Han Leia kid,
Mhm.
and there's he's not doesn't know if he wants to kill Han, but then he does it anyway. But then he's not what's going on, and then next two movies
Yeah.
build on that as well. Um, Krennic is more of a traditional Star Wars villain. He's definitely a bit of a Weasley kind of fella, but I don't think
Mhm.
there's much nuance to him. But then Kira, she definitely joins up with Maul, but there's a lot of
Mhm.
complicated feelings to that. And then you get to the streaming shows, and then I look to Balin, my favorite.
Yeah.
He is the villain of that show. He is Ahsoka's antagonist, but
Mhm.
he isn't just a mwahaha, I'm evil. It's there's when he's asked to kill Ahsoka, he's like, that's a darn shame. It's such a member of the order. I have a lot of respect for you, Ahsoka Tano. As your master spoke highly of you, right? I mean, I'm going to kill you, but I'm gonna do it with respect. And he honors
Yeah.
the agreement with Sabine and all that. So I think it's interesting that as Star Wars gets obviously new writers and different people who kind of have different writing skills and
Mhm.
their characters and whatnot, we get villains who aren't just the archetypes, who aren't just evil incarnate like the Emperor, but they are
Yeah.
more fully fleshed out characters. I mean, you're reading in the Obi-Wan Kenobi shirt. I just saw
Right.
that right now. Riva was the villain for pretty much the whole thing until, but she's also
Hmm.
complicated too. Even her reasons for being an Inquisitor aren't just I'm evil, mwaha. It's I'm trying to kill Vader because I know what he did to me, and I've been kind of doing this
Hmm.
undercover thing that's really overtaken my life, and it's like,
Hmm.
oh shoot, I almost became the thing I hated. Um,
Yeah.
so I think, and again, Jod is the villain of Skeleton Crew, but again, he's a complicated figure. He's not just an evil character. And I think that's another thing I'm curious to hope, and I hope to see Star Wars kind of go on is, yeah, we can have these archetypes, we can have like these characters in these positions, but they don't have to be so straight up just evil, like a Palpatine, like a Snoke, even like a Hux. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know if I would have wanted this per se, but it would have been interesting if someone like Rey Sloane was the leader of the First Order from the movies, because
Hmm.
she's bad, and I don't want to say she's the quote unquote the good Imperial, but she's also not just a full on I'm gonna mwahaha it all the time.
Right. Yeah.
She's still bad, and she but she does obviously bad things.
Hmm.
But I think that's sort of interesting as well. Like like in Andor with like Deidre, bad person. I mean, she definitely tortures Bix, but she's more of a stern, and you kind of see a little bit more of the character within.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I think that is something interesting as well, where it's like, yes, these are villains in their role in the narrative. If this is the main character, this is the villain, but then
Hmm.
they're the fleshed out character. But Matthew, what about your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, it's the question of do we want to have sympathy with the villain, or do we want to only see them as the resistance for the hero?
Mm-hmm.
Um, do we want? I mean, do we have the time to complicate that story? Um, time for the hero to have to uh maybe try and find a more diplomatic solution. I mean, something like here's a great example. The Nameless are the nameless villains or victims. You know, they were ripped from their home
Mm-hmm.
multiple times. No wonder they're starving to death. They're weapons, but they're super formidable, and they can get a mind of their own. And Baron Boulon's experiments are making them even more the case, and
Mm-hmm.
it's weird and creepy. But it's the question: do you want to give them, yeah, like you're saying, the tragic backstory? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want them to be understandable or not? It's the Thanos problem, right?
Right.
Thanos, yeah, he's the villain in Endgame. Here's the wild thing. He's the villain in Endgame. He's the hero in Infinity War, effectively. Just like Plagueis and Palpatine are the hero in Plagueis,
Right.
even though we're cheering for their opponent, but they're the ones who go on the hero's journey, is what I mean.
Oh,
And that's what's so
absolutely.
fascinating about those two stories is,
Mm-hmm.
and why I love them so much is why we all love them so much,
Mm-hmm.
is because it gives this angle, especially again. I mean, I know it's Marvel, it's not Star Wars, but with Thanos, you disagree with his point, you
Mm-hmm.
know, reduce half the population, and
Mm-hmm.
people will still hoard their food and material resources.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just share those?
Make
But
more resources. How about that? Triple.
yeah, but um, yeah, but you understand where he's coming from a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Similar, with Plagueis and Palpatine, you're fascinated by
Mm-hmm.
their uh, mechanics and machinations, and you're kind of getting to cheer for them a little more. They're not villains in these stories or so much, but you said like Riva, well, Anakin, I think is the quintessential one. It's the thing I was getting at before. Well, you were getting it before.
Mm-hmm.
He's a true believer who's manipulated. Cyril Karn
Mm-hmm.
is a true believer in the Empire. He also wants to suck Deidre's face. There's a bit of a crush there, so that's definitely a motivation. I can
Oh,
see that
I
in you.
hope he takes her to his mother's. That's gonna be fun.
That'd be funny. But yeah, it it is that question. I mean, and the question is, okay, what does that do for the story, for the hero?
Hmm.
Because I mean, what it can do
Hmm.
is question the myth of redemptive violence that a lot of these stories can track in, right? I mean, The Last Jedi is such a perfect example of where it really succeeds in denying the myth of redemptive violence. Luke literally says, "What do you want to go in front of the First Order with a laser sword? That's not going to go the way you think." You know,
Hmm.
the point is for them to make their escape, and yeah, then at the end of Rise of Skywalker, they need to confront this great evil, great World War II level evil. Um, but yeah, it definitely makes for a richer story. It makes for a more complicated story, and that's the thing. Thinking about. Well, here's the wild thing. So here's another wild thing is, you mentioned Grievous and Dooku and the Neimoidians in the Clone Wars.
Right.
That's the whole theory that Clone Wars is actually meant to be Republic propaganda. It's very much this. It starts off at least as very much this kids show, this simple story. We don't get to see much of the separatist point of view.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. But in in the Mandalorian and in some other parts, in even in the Bad Batch, we
Hmm.
do start to see that. Uh in Tales of the Jedi. Or is it?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dooku's Tales of the Jedi. We start to see
Hmm.
his kinds of grievances, and we have other stories too where we're seeing that. So yeah, I mean, I think the Acolyte tried to do that with Osha. Um, tried to give her a very sympathetic perspective. It was, I think, one of the reasons it didn't succeed is because it almost seemed like it was saying, okay, the Sith get to be the hero here. And I think some people took that the wrong way, just because the way the show ended, right?
Hmm.
On this high note of Osha joining the Sith, which I think people, if we could get the finished story, we'll know that that's not going to go well for her. But
Right.
it's that's part of the problem with we need the story to get finished. Um, but also then I love that episode 3. Again, I keep bringing that up. There are no villains and there are no heroes in that episode until later we find out. But yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the farthest Star Wars has gone in writing a villain. I guess if Mother Coral maybe May.
Well, if we had finished the story, it probably would have been Plagueis, who was
Yeah,
the
maybe. Yeah.
because ultimately I
So
think probably would have the villain.
well, then we're saying with Luthen, for example, if he's responsible for the Gorman massacre and
Mhm.
Saw, do they become villains that we're cheering for because we're the rebels? There's another question. So yeah.
Yeah, you brought up Thanos and the villain, like he is the hero of Infinity War.
Mhm,
I definitely agree. I think, I think,
mhm,
I think the Avengers marketing is a little is playing tricks on the audience because we're gonna get those button seats. But I think if you want
mhm.
to be a little honest, if we're being honest, it should just be called Thanos Infinity War, right? Like that's
Yeah.
featuring Thor and the Avengers, right? Like, but it really is Thanos'
Yeah.
story.
Mhm,
Endgame is the Avengers movie. Infinity War is the Thanos
mhm,
story. Um, and it is interesting because I think this is what I talk about when we talk about like writing villains and whether or not they should be sympathetic or we
mhm.
get their point of view. I will say the big difference though I think between Plagueis and the book and Infinity War is well no Plagueis himself as a character I think
Mhm.
definitely has more of that Thanos quality to him. Where
Yeah.
I think of the scene where he kills Gamora and there's like a just a sadness in him.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but I don't. I mean, maybe George Lucas would have tried. I don't know if it
Mhm,
worked, but if he would have tried. Where like I can't see Palpatine ever doing that to anybody. If he kills somebody, he's just gonna laugh. He's gonna like enjoy himself.
mhm.
But you know, I mean, I guess I think Star Wars still should continue to have just those evil for evil's sake villains, right?
Yeah.
Like I think Star Palpatine should always just kind of be, oh no, you're always a monster. You know,
Mhm.
whether or not we can debate, are people born evil, whether or not, like, in the realm of fiction, Palpatine should always be the little kid who, like, just enjoyed killing even as a kid, like,
Yeah.
right? He's the little
The psychopath. Yeah.
a psychopathic kid who, like, just, even as a little kid with a little monster. Um, so, that I mean, that would be interesting. But yeah, Plagueis is definitely, as a character, is
Mhm.
as a hero, quote unquote, of the protagonist of that story is a little bit more on the Thanos, where it's like everything you're saying is bonkers and nuts, Mister. I think I, as a Sith, am a enlightened being who should rule the galaxy.
Yeah.
But I do think it's coming from a dark altruistic place.
Yeah, and a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, altruism can be subverted and twisted, right? I think
Mhm.
it can, where he thinks this is what's best for the galaxy, whereas Palpatine just like, I'm a psychopath, so I can want all the power, so I can just kill whoever I
Yeah.
want. Um, you know, rule in malevolence, as a few of the lines of the book actually go for. So no, right? Like, or I don't even think. I mean, I think what makes Star Wars interesting,
Mhm.
instead, why I think every now and then we're drawn to the Andors, is not so much here is a story of heroes and villains. Here's a story of people making choices.
Yeah.
They can be good choices, they can be bad choices,
Mhm.
they can be neutral choices, but these are people. They're put in situations. Here are the choices they're making. We can morally judge them if we want to, and maybe sometimes we should. But
Mhm.
that's how it's portrayed. Like, they're making choices. I think Acolyte's more of that, honestly, where it's like, I think the
Yeah.
flashbacks are very much, here are people, they're making choices. Master Soul made a dumb choice.
Yeah.
It may cause a bunch of problems down the line.
Mhm.
Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting too. I mean, because Soul, I mean, he's not a villain in that story, but yeah, he's not really a hero either. He's kind of in the middle there.
person who
I
made a choice.
I think again, my point with Osha, the high note of Osha joining the Sith. I think one of the things it came across, at least, and again, oddly enough, the why I love episode 3 yet, however, is at least one of the ways people thought it was saying, they're wrong, but one of the things they thought that episode was saying was the Jedi are evil and they're oppressing these poor witches. That's not what the episode's saying. It's one of the possible interpretations of that episode. What the question of whether or not a villain is understandable, likable, believable, sympathetic, um, almost heroic, or full on becomes the hero at the end. I mean, I think we're also dealing with questions of who gets to decide what is good and evil, who gets to decide what's right and wrong. Why should this institution in the center of the galaxy decide what is right and wrong, you know, for this group of witches on this other planet? Ultimately, oddly enough, to the Jedi Order's credit, the High Council, their credit, they said, leave the kids alone. Just leave them leave, get out of there, don't do anything. And instead, Soul's the one who's too bound in his attachment. And yeah, like you said, he makes the wrong choice, or makes a choice that has negative consequences down the line.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a question of, again, who gets to determine right and wrong. I think Star Wars, I don't think Star Wars can ever be postmodern in
Nah, I
that
think
way.
Star Wars.
This is what I'm getting at, and I'm using postmodern in this very postmodern is such a weird word.
I don't even
Star
understand it
Wars can
myself, so
never be um
morally
morally
gray.
morally agnostic.
Yeah,
And
I
I
get it.
think the Acolyte, I think Leslie, she teased the possibility that it was going to be morally agnostic, and so people jumped on that. Um, Again, episode 3 was morally agnostic. ultimately. But and I love that contained within one episode, the chaos of that. But then ultimately does come out saying there is good and there is evil. George would always be clear that there is good if you are caring for others, living for others, and being honest and clear about yourself. And evil is if you're being selfish or fearful and protective and holding on to attachments. Like that's the thing, is we're getting back to that. I think, I think, like I say, I know this is the kind of my incendiary political comment. Please let me into the country in July. I think Donald Trump is the final solution to postmodernity's truth problem. He's not. He is. He represents a problem, but he's also a symptom of our moral agnosticism as a culture. And this is me sounding weird and conservative, but I'm not trying to be. I'm trying to be saying, oh yeah, I have traditions, that I care about. It says theology I'm with Joel. I forgot to change that.
It was last week.
Yeah, from last week. I have traditions that kind of help me discern, and communities that help me discern right and wrong. I think we can. Star Wars at its best. I think Star Trek as well at its best. That's an interesting convergence that can move forward and saying, yeah, there's some clear good and evil out there, and we need to recapture the moral high ground and say, you were my brother, Anakin. You were the chosen one. You're gonna bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. The balance of the Force is not dark, not. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing, right? We want the gray Jedi. We want the balance to be this sort of equality, equal power between light and dark. And that's, again, we go back to this all the time. That's not what George was saying. And so
George didn't even use the term light side in the original trilogy.
Yeah. So
it was just the Force and the dark side.
So to have clear, I mean, you can have so that's something, you can have a very interesting story, an important story to say, how do people become evil? And I think that is what Leslie was trying to do. How do people turn to the dark side? It is what George did in the prequels, right? I mean, that's, again, my favorite question in Star Wars, is the relationship between Anakin and Vader, right?
Although although Acolyte, I do think it's not a fall. I think it's an ascent, at least for May. Nope. Osha.
Well, no, but I think ultimately it's because we only get half the story, right?
That's true.
I think ultimately
Play's got to get rid of them both.
I think it was going to be about, how do you become a villain? How does someone who's kind and caring become a villain? Again, little Annie taking them in the sandstorm, right? Saying, okay, so that's my point. What I'm getting at is, you can ask that question. It's important to ask that, because we need to be able to have these conversations, right? We need to actually also say to Trump supporters, why do you care about what you care about? What are you afraid of? What are you concerned about? Not everyone can have that conversation, but also to say it's as part of bringing more light into the world, right? Having those in-person connections that can actually humanize undocumented migrants and humanize Black folks and queer folks, right? That can bring more light into the world, and so we do need that, and we need a clear sense of good and evil, and stories to remind us actually that there is good and evil. And so it's why we've gone away from Battlestar Galactica and Breaking Bad and House of Cards, right? It's why I think even House of the Dragon is a bit clearer than Game of Thrones, for example, about heroes and villains, because we're in a different time where we need that. I think that's why Star Trek is back. I know that it's a bit iffy in terms of who's doing what, but why it is more relevant now, because it's always been aspirational in that way as well. So
See,
Star Wars
I feel
has
like
its
the
own version of
opposite's
that.
gonna happen. I feel like more people are gonna like screw aspiration. I feel like more people are gonna get cynical. I feel like we're gonna see more cynicism and
I hope
culture.
not. I don't know. I think people are longing for stories in which stories are hopeful stories. But I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see.
I
I
was
mean,
actually
people might get more like the villain that Ray might have to confront. People might just get more apathetic.
it's possible. Actually, I was thinking about. Funny enough, you were talking about the ascent of May.
Mhm.
Um,
Or Osha.
I was thinking about this. Oh, shit, I always get those. Dang
Yeah.
it! I get those two.
They are twins. They are played by
They're
the same
twins.
actor.
I mean, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Think about this movie that M. Night Shyamalan did
Hmm.
years ago, starring um oh shoot, Mace Windu, uh,
Samuel Jackson.
Samuel Jackson, um, and Bruce Willis,
Mhm.
called
Nice.
Glass, and it's a fascinating story. I heard mixed reviews, but I heard that like there's an interesting concept of you were it's like a superhero world, and you either are born a villain or a hero,
Hmm.
and Glass is like a character who doesn't know his place in the world. Got like bones. Kind of got my disease actually, so which is interesting. I have to
Interesting.
watch this movie. I've only heard like the summary. And in the
Hmm.
end, he finds out that he's actually supposed to be a villain,
Right.
and that's interesting because by being a villain, then in a weird way, he has found his community. And this is like the one thing where superhero films can like really do with like it's basically where like things are like really weird but interesting. With like
Hmm.
yeah, he finds out he's the villain, but now he's happy because he's finally knows where he belongs.
Hmm.
And I always feel like
Interesting.
that's almost a little bit what at least season one of the Acolytes trying to do with like,
Yeah.
oh, she finally found her place in the world. It clearly was not with the Jedi because that wasn't working out.
Hmm.
Again, we don't know how the season two would have ended. Probably with her dead. Plagueis had anything to say about it.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, to say the least. At least that's where that movie went.
Hmm.
Um,
So certainly, again, the sympathetic villain, right?
the humanized, maybe not sympathetic. I don't know if sympathetic's the right word. But I
Yeah,
think
more humanized.
I like
Sure.
humanized because right, like Palpatine's not a human. I mean, he is, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
He's just the devil
What I
incarnate.
mean is
He's a cartoon
that
villain.
the audience goes with Osha's emotional journey through the
Right.
show, right?
Right.
We go with, we go in the Plagueis novel, right? We go with their political journey,
Mhm.
you know.
Pretty
So,
much. I mean, Thanos.
are we going with Markian's journey? Well, here's the interesting thing there, right? That's why phase 2 is so spectacular
Mhm.
because it says, oh yeah, there's this evil faction called the Nile, but they start as these really super peaceful, lovable farmers out on the this little sect over on this farming community in Dalna,
Mhm.
and Markian's great grandmother or whoever is this wonderful young woman who gives out flowers
Mhm.
and is genuinely horrified because she's been trained to be genuinely horrified when someone uses the force and really believes. That's the thing with these insular religious beliefs. When someone uses the force, you know, uh, it really humanizes the whole Nile. And then you see Baron Bulan going back to the aims of the path of the open hand.
I don't know if
It's
I
really
ever
special.
felt like I've connected with Martheon at any time. I definitely connect with
No,
Marta more.
yeah. So you
I like.
connect with Marta, and in is in Temptation of the Force, where you know Marta progressively more and more invades his thoughts. That's again kind of spoiling, but um yeah, the more Marta shows up in phase 3, if she does show up more, I hope so. She got to show up in Trials of the Jedi.
Oh,
Um
I'm sure. I'm sure
in
Martheon's
the
having his
way
mental.
the way Evereni can just, I don't know, show up from the dead somehow. It's a convenient device, but it's gonna make for fascinating character story for Markian. So Marta is the humanization, if you will, of Markian and of the whole whole Nile. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it also just kind of depends on the story Star Wars wants to tell. Is it telling a more
Exactly.
black and white story, like most of the saga for the most part, like 2/3 of it, or they're doing the acolyte thing of, or the Andor thing, like a little bit more morally questionable. Like we gotta,
Yeah.
like be the rebels, but they're doing weird thing, but still against the Empire, and what's gonna happen there?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Also, you said 2/3 of the saga. Again,
prequels definitely got a little bit more complicated.
yeah, exactly, and that's what's one of the reasons I love it so much. It's asking questions of
Not
like
as
like
complicated as I
like well
like.
in the Last Jedi too, right?
Oh yeah.
Asking questions of what heroism is and what uh you know can these institutions be trusted, and what makes institutions trustworthy versus untrustworthy, and it's the people in them, in a large part. But I mean, Mon Mothma in Andor, we're gonna see Mon Mothma in the Senate,
Mhm.
and in Mask of Fear, she's trying to use the Senate. In Andor, she's still trying to use the Senate, and it's only until the Gorman massacre, where the Empire rears its ugly head, that she realizes she can't. So that journey, yeah, of the Senate being a villain because it's an instrument of Palpatine.
I would be remiss though if we just talked a little about. We'll get to the next and final part. But I want to talk about this one. There's one extra character because he's also going to be big
Mm,
next year. Let's talk about Balin a little bit.
mm,
Because I love Balin. Balin's like my favorite, one of my
mhm.
favorite new characters in a lot of Star Wars.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's actually really interesting that Balin is in Ahsoka for a couple reasons. One, because we have Thrawn, but Thrawn's very much he's just your Imperial,
yeah,
long live the Empire, restore order. I mean, there's definitely a little bit, he's not full
mm,
on the Emperor. There's a couple moments where you kind of see like, oh shoot,
yeah.
like there's a look he gets where he finds out, well, what's her face,
Uh, Morgan Elsbeth.
Morgan Elizabeth is dead, and he's like, oh shoot,
Hmm.
she was a good asset to have. I wish she was still alive.
Yeah,
But then also he's like, like rain
Tim
hellfire.
Zahn tried to make Thrawn more interesting, and I don't know if he succeeded. But
Rain hellfire across them. Even
yeah,
with Ezra dead.
hmm,
Morgan's actually kind of interesting when you kind of find out her whole thing about revenge for Dathomir.
hmm,
But Balin, as I think when you get both seasons together, even though it probably will feel a little
hmm,
janky because it's not the same actor, but can't do anything about that, sadly. Um,
hmm,
it will feel interesting because he's the villain of the show, but he's not very. He's doing bad things. I mean, he Darth
yeah,
Vader hallways those New Republic people. Um, but he isn't villain. He isn't. He's a very humanized villain. He
yeah,
honestly he is kind of a Thanos in some way, right? Like, in fact, actually, I think he kind of is the. Now he obviously isn't looking for the Infinity Stones, but he is kind of having this
hmm,
hero's journey search for God thing.
yeah.
He's gonna look for the Morris gods. He's getting. It's almost he's Star Trek. It is like oh my
Oh
god,
gosh,
Star Trek commercial. He is like Cybok or
oh
what's his
gosh,
right. He is
yeah.
looking for Jakari. Um,
I don't
is it
recognize that movie.
is it being going to go to the Morris gods and you're like, what do the Morris gods need with a starship?
Oh gosh,
um, right? But it's kind of like that, right? He's looking for the
yeah,
gods
yeah.
right now.
But
Because
why? I guess the
but
question.
why? Like we get a little bit of hints of like he sees this cycle of darkness and then the light and the dark and the light again and again,
Hmm.
the Republic, the Empire, eventually the First Order.
Yeah.
And he's clearly the bad guy, and I don't think what he wants is necessarily probably a healthy thing.
Hmm.
But the way Ray Stevenson played him,
Yeah.
the way we look at him, there is something to that. There is the humanization to him, and just wahaha, I'm evil like the Emperor,
Yeah.
even the Thrawn in the show. Um, so I think that's something fascinating. Thoughts?
Mm. Yeah. No, he is interesting, and especially he's going for the kind of Sith-like consolidation of power. Right. He's trying to find this.
Is he though? I'm not sure.
Well, Maybe. I mean, he's the closest we get. I mean, he's not a gray Jedi. He's a creamsicle Jedi.
He's a dark sider, but I don't know if he has plans of Empire though.
Well, or something deeper, something more mystical.
Mhm.
But he wants to be able to control the power, right? He wants, he
Or
wants to
end it.
find it, or be a part of it and join it. Yeah. It's a good choice. We don't fully know what his motivations are, really. We just know he's willing to kill whoever gets in his way. He's willing to use Thrawn to get to Peridia, etc. But yeah, we don't know. Yeah, again, it does seem he's leaning towards wanting to grasp that power at least.
Mm-hmm.
But he's building on a tradition that we've come to know of submitting to the Force and seeking the will of the Force, right? He's he insists on having his Padawan have the braid, right? He talks fondly of being a Jedi. So he's clearly influenced by that past. He's clearly deeply wounded by Order 66, probably. Not clearly, but probably. There's just that level of familiarity with him as a Jedi. His armor is similar to Jedi in the Clone Wars. That was an intentional choice on his part.
He has respect for his enemies.
He has a deep respect. He isn't, like you said, he lets Sabine do her thing. She's like, no, I'm here for Ahsoka. That leads to an openness, and I kind of wonder, if he does encounter the father, if he encounters the daughter, who
or
of
the
course,
son.
well, specifically encounters the father and the daughter, which who of course is bound to Ahsoka. Is there going to be a transformation because he's open to what they may have to offer? He's looking for what they have to offer, and he is looking, right? Like you said, he's looking. He's on this search. He's seeking, even if his motivations aren't fully kosher. He's still seeking, and so that's what gives him. I mean, yeah, and Ray Stevenson really brought that. I think Rory McCann's going to bring that.
Oh, I'm sure. I have
to that.
A great
all
actor.
Those layers of, I want to transcend this cycle. I'm seeking for meaning. I think it's in grasping for power, but what if it isn't?
Yeah, and I know I said we'd get to the next part, but you made me think of this.
Mhm.
I've always kind of, I could be completely wrong, but I always feel like there's like more, at least a good 50% chance. Well, it's certainly more than 0% chance. There's a high chance we could see the sun again. I don't think he's dead, especially because,
Well,
like,
I don't think they can die.
Oh, that's it. I mean, that's why I said I don't think he's
Like,
dead.
they're going to see the daughter. Like, I don't think
Right.
they can actually die. They're archetypes,
and they're weird.
from the Force.
They're weird, godly creatures. But the sun's interesting as well because he is the antagonist of Mortis.
Yeah.
But again, as a villain, again, he's not the Emperor. He is not, which is weird because you think you're probably more powerful than the Emperor.
And voiced by Sam Witwer.
And voiced by Sam Witwer. But and then there's the whole deleted scene which could have completely changed that perspective of Morris, where the son's actually being manipulated by Sith of the past, which is a whole other thing. But
send that to me if you find that. Send it to me.
Really, you don't know the
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, he talks to Revan and Bane. They were going to be in it. I'm going to send it to you.
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I didn't remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then George wanted that cut. But yeah, I'll send you that. That might be interesting to talk about. Yeah. But he is darkness incarnate, but yet for some reason, I don't think he is evil in the same way the Emperor is evil.
Right.
I mean, again, like when he kills his sister and his father, he's not like, "Whoa, I did it." It's like, "No, father, I'm sorry." He's almost like Kylo Ren in some way. It's like he's got like that edginess, but it's like, "I don't want to do it, but I want you to. I don't want to." Like he's crying and he's mad, and it's like all the emotions at once. And I think that's interesting for this personification of the dark side,
Yeah.
who's not the Emperor, because I mean, obviously, to me, the Emperor is the true personification of the dark side.
Mhm.
So what is the Son? And I'll take it
Yeah.
to you because you love Mortis.
Well, he's a manifestation,
Hmm.
like a literal literal embodiment of the dark side, and therefore, if we're going by George's definitions here, because Mortis is from George, the literal embodiment of the lack of light,
Right.
if that makes any sense. And so clearly he's bound to his sister
Mhm.
and bound to the way his father, namely Balance, is bound to the sister, the daughter. Um, that's why they can't die, because they're not mortals. They're manifestations that can keep recurring. Because if the daughter died, it meant the light side died. I mean, the force died, which doesn't make sense, right?
Unless
Um,
Balin wants to kill the Force, which is possible. Like we,
but yeah, but again, kind of path of the open hand kind of thing. But um, I think I wonder if he's gonna. So here's kind of what I'm thinking here is, um, like Palpatine, Balin, they go to the dark side because they believe that the dark side is a real thing, that's a source of power
Mhm,
that can actually offer them something.
mhm,
Uh, they because yeah, in kind of the finite
mhm,
human form, we can't see that the darkness is actually just the lack of light, and is just uh yeah, like the kind of the crumpled remorse that we see the Son have, that we see Ben Solo have,
mhm.
um, on the planet, with the water. I'm blanking on the name. Um, you know that yeah, that they can't see that, and so they spend their whole lives, and they ruin their lives
Mhm,
pursuing that power,
mhm.
only for it to not give them what they ultimately want.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, here's the thing, right? Uh, I don't think there is an explicit connection between the Force ghosts and the wills, but sorry, the Mortis gods and the wills. But Qui-Gon, he's following the daughter. Yeah, he ends up dying,
Mhm.
but then he ends up with victory for all time.
Right.
And so it's where your life goes, and what your life is devoted to. And so um the interesting question for villains is, how does one's life get devoted to something curved in on themselves, as opposed to being present for others, um, through fear, through hate, through anger, through suffering, through suffering especially. um, what does that mean then for the hero to devote themselves to others, and be clear about themselves and honest about their vulnerabilities? And yeah, I mean, and keep in mind, and with Balin, you know Ahsoka. Well, this is an interesting foil. Balin, he leaves the order because of Order 66, presumably, or we don't quite know what.
It sounds like he's an Order 66 survivor, and
Yeah,
then he just took a turn
yeah,
somewhere.
but you know, he's going to be the foil for Ahsoka.
Mhm,
Ahsoka, of course, in season one, has found her inner Jedi more fully,
mhm,
found that youthful playfulness, found the snips within her.
mhm,
You know, um, to be more fuller servant of the light, even as she left the order.
mhm.
Yeah, I wonder, and then of course she's connected to the daughter. I do wonder, you know, Balin's opposition to Ahsoka, Balin's grasping for the son and the father. Um, again, if that's open to his transformation, what it will mean for Ahsoka and the daughter to confront them again. Then, of course, we also have Anakin's legacy in there, right? Anakin's a Force ghost in there. Don't forget.
Right.
Um, what he was able to do in preserving the balance with the daughter, I guess ultimately. Well, again, not really, but that whole test. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting that Filoni, he's gonna go there. We know he's gonna go there. He went to the world between worlds. So yeah, again, so to bring up the question, what does Balin and Shin to a lesser extent mean in this context for Ahsoka's journey? That'll be fascinating to see, and what Balin, his own journey goes on.
Indeed. So we'll have to find out next year. Next
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
So yeah. So okay, now we'll finally get to the last part of
Mhm.
this little note. I call it third factions. Um,
Mhm.
this is just something that I think is just interesting from a like
Yeah.
a world building perspective and storytelling, where you don't want to always have the Empire, but you don't want to necessarily leave the original trilogy or just a
Mhm.
pre-established era of minor villains, minor kind of third factions that are
Mhm.
running around even when you have the big bads are still alive. You see
Yeah.
a lot of this in the Dark Times era. You have like I think of Malicos from Fallen Order. I think of
Yeah.
Dagon from Survivor. Maul's an example. He kind of becomes a third wild card, where
Mhm.
he's a crime lord in the Empire, but he hates Palpatine, hates Vader. So
Mhm.
he's evil, but he hates the Empire as well. Um,
Mhm.
all the crime lords kind of fall into this, where there's like their third factions. You got the vampire creepy people that Afra and Luke meet in that one arc.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh god. Here it
Screaming
was called.
Citadel. I think it's called Screaming Citadel.
Yeah, Screaming Citadel.
Screaming Citadel. And I just think these guys are just interesting. I think they just add flavor to the
Mhm.
galaxy, where it's like, it doesn't always have to be like, what kind of Imperial do we need to fight this week or today or for this season or this story? It's like, not everybody, Star Wars, yes, is always two major factions, but not everything is divided between Jedi and Sith or even
Mhm.
Empire and Rebels.
Yeah.
There are third factions, there are mini tyrants, people who kind of have their own little realms to govern, and maybe the heroes just find out and can help out.
Mhm.
Um, there are the crime lords who, they're not good, but they'll sometimes help both sides depending on who's
Yeah.
paying. There's Darth Maul, who's like got Crimson Dawn, is like kind of create his own little fiefdom, and probably would love to get back at the Emperor, but knows right now he can't.
Mhm.
Um, and I just think that just makes it interesting. I just think
Yeah.
these characters, they add flavor, they add more villains. You don't have to necessarily use the Empire all the time, even if you don't want to necessarily leave the Skywalker saga or make a new era. Um, and it just kind of shows, hey, it's a big galaxy. There's all sorts of things going on. That even the Emperor
Mhm.
doesn't care about or know about. So that's cool.
Mhm.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on this? This is just one of those smaller things where,
I mean, they're still villains,
oh yeah,
right? Like Dakin Gera and Darth and Maul. I mean, clearly still villains.
yeah,
But yeah, definitely within. Yeah, I mean, well, with the kind of the flavor of the week a little bit. Um, Mandalorian season 3 kind of had a bit of that kind of villain of the week. Yeah, show a different angle to say resistance to the Empire,
mhm,
for example, can still take on this selfish. If he's going alone, right? I mean, that's the
mhm,
thing with Maul. He's going alone. He's still part of the Sith tradition.
mhm.
He's trying to claim to be the Sith Lord. Is he trying to take the Empire for himself? Who knows if he thinks that's at all realistic? Probably not. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
um again, it's also what it means
Mhm.
for Ezra and Cal Kestis, right?
Right.
It's um you know what it you're tempting Ezra with the dark side, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of the point. That's the point in of Maul is, yeah, he's the possibility of resisting the Empire, right? He's
Mhm.
defeating the Sith, and he's going to Maul and tempted by Maul's power to defeat the Sith, and that it can be in this very self-centered, self-interested way of, again, using this word, consolidating power, using anger and hatred and
Right.
fear. And so it Maul becomes the thing that Ezra has to discard and say no to in order to, I mean, that's the thing. In order to really step up in the rebellion, there's this moment with in season 3 where there's this real question of, is it season 3? I think it's season 3 where you know he's really being tempted by Maul, goes off to Tatooine in search of Kenobi, but um, with Maul,
Mhm.
and yeah, and um, I think Hera and Canon have to have these talks with him, tough talks with him, and say, what's going on? Where are you going? Because he had a rough childhood too. He had a rough upbringing as well. And is he going to use that for good or for evil? Is he going to embrace his found family, or like Maul go on his own? And so, yeah, it was a really effective use of a villain, who of course isn't the main villain, but yeah, spurs the character onward. So yeah,
I like it because it's like either Maul the villain, but the villain was kind of no power, right? Where it's
yeah,
like, and I think like another interesting thing too, like especially in Rebels, in the
it's a
context of
lame duck
Rebels,
villain.
in kind of a way, but yeah, but like that's also the season where Thrawn shows up. Thrawn is the villain with power. He is the Grand Admiral of the Seventh Fleet. He's got all
Yeah.
these resources. All is well. I mean, he had power. Who knows what happens to Crimson Dawn? That I don't even know if Crimson Dawn was invented yet. Um,
Right.
we well maybe one day we'll find out. Gets a little bit more smoothing out what was going on there. But Maul
Mhm.
has no power. He is not of any system, but he's definitely still the villain.
Mhm.
And they got people like Dagon Garrick who's trying to amass power, to maybe one day take on this emperor who he
Mhm.
just discovered exists right now. Um,
Surprise. Yeah.
Surprise. Um, you know, uh,
Mhm.
I mean, again, I just think that's just an interesting. It makes the galaxy a bigger place where it's like, here are like, and I think this can make the conflict more interesting as well.
Mhm.
Oh, hang on,
Dude.
there you go.
We're good.
Of fighting the Empire. I guess the question if you're fighting the Empire, but why? Where it's
Yeah.
like the rebels fighting the Empire for a good cause. Restore the Republic and all that.
Mhm.
Kira, Maul, Dagon are kind of fighting the Empire because, well, maybe less Kira, but I don't really know what she would have done. But Maul
Mhm.
and Dagon probably, I can gather to guess of they're fighting the Empire because they just want to replace Palpatine and be on the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Um, where I mean, Kira said she wants to crush the pyramid. I don't know what that means for her
Mhm.
compared to the rebels who also want to probably crush the pyramid and replace it with democracy, the circle of the Senate.
Yeah.
I guess. Right. So uh, that's kind of an interesting question there of like
Mhm.
these third factions who, even if they're fighting the Empire, they might also be fighting the rebellion too, if it
True.
existed. Although Kira never did. She didn't fight the rebellion. She actually helped them. So she kind
Yeah,
of just stayed out
exactly.
of their way.
The
Um,
They're good.
no, it's like she more like, I'm gonna do
Yeah.
my thing. I'm not gonna get in your way. Just don't get in my way. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
Be interesting question to ask Charles. So
Yeah.
not that he'd answer it,
Right.
but what? So we're talking about Kira in the Crimson Saga, right?
Yeah, in the Crimson
In
Saga.
Hansel.
Yeah.
Hansel. Yeah. What her aim, what her end goal was. I wonder if, because it was a bit more noble, she's rewarded by not being killed off, kind of in this weird mystic balance, or kind of yeah, why it's a more satisfying ending almost, that she survives, because yeah, we were kind of cheering for her. She ends up helping the rebellion, helping, especially um helping Leia confront Zara and her fleet, and then escape and things like that. But also, and tried Madeline's son trying to recruit Yoda uh, to the cause,
I
not
mean,
even trying. So, and this whole cast of characters, but also the Knights of Ren. She gets the Knights of Ren to try and go to Vader's castle and get a. So, their methods are kind of iffy. She's definitely manipulating the underworld with Cordelia. Yeah, she's got her hands everywhere. I mean, she's more clearly
Here's what it is.
neutral in this.
Here's what it is.
But well, let me just say the question again. She wants to break the wheel, like her Game of Thrones character. This is where that comes from. She wants to break the wheel, but yeah, what does she want to replace it with? She doesn't really have a good answer. So she's no longer the villain, but she's not the hero. Let Mon Mothma and Leia be the hero. Sure, yeah.
It weirdly enough reminds me of the 2024 campaign where it's just like you're anti-Trump, but what are you pro? That was like one of the big reasons why I wanted really like Kamala Harris that much, among other reasons. But it's like, I mean, think about that for a hot second, Matthew. Kira's anti the Empire. Okay, that's good, right? We all think that.
Yep.
But her army, her coalition includes the Knights of Ren, and she also wants Yoda. Do we see the problem here?
Yeah.
Knights
And
Ren,
Kofan Ferris with the Ascendant, and
we got. I mean, I guess we got not Sabine. Sabe. We got Sabe.
Sabe's sort of in there, yeah.
Sabe, but Ochia Bastoon is gonna just work for Palpatine again later.
Yeah.
Do we see the problem here where it's like the Rebel Alliance? Mon, Leia, even Luke, Han, even to some lesser extent, Akbar. They all kind of know what the end game is.
They arrest Lando, right, and put him on trial, right? Like that's their discipline. Yeah. So
although I think even Lando by then is like, sure, New Republic sounds great.
He is on board. He is on board at that time. But that's my point. Is you've been someone who seems to be on their side. The fact that he committed this breach of security is a mean reason to put him on trial. Whereas Kira wouldn't be welcome in the New Republic or in the Alliance to Restore the Republic. She'd have to prove herself.
And look how quickly her allies turned on her. It's like Knights of Ren were ready to go, and then okay, Palpatine, you're the big
the Knights of Ren definitely jumped ship too. So that'd be interesting. What was Kira? Does Kira even have the mind? Yes, she would. She has to have the mind to think ahead.
She'd be a good politician, but I just don't see. I don't see Kira like. Now we're going to reestablish the Senate. I'll be the chancellor. Or I'm new empress. All hail me. Maybe she would. I don't know, but she's showing from Maul.
Again, I don't think so. I think she was just focused on breaking the wheel. Oddly enough, right? Maybe that's why Charles picked her because.
Right. I mean, hey, Daenerys at least felt like she was getting herself be queen by the end.
Yes.
It's like just more of a centralized Westeros by the end. So even then, she seemed like she had more of a plan than Kira.
She becomes the villain at the end. Right?
That's true. But right. But to go back to the original idea of like these third factions, right? Like, I just think again they make for like the middle ground. These like or little even mini empires. Like I think of the Bad Batch villain where they meet they go to the factory. Like, he's a villain. I don't know if he's associated with the Empire, but he's pretty happy in his little tyrannical factory. The mini evil.
Well, this is that one thing where what's her face sends them on a Rhea Perlman sends them on a wild anther chase.
Yeah.
Just these oppositions. I mean, but the thing is, it's flexible, nimble, varied ways of serving the wider story, right? Because the point of there is, I mean, I don't know what's her name. She's
Omega
with Rhea Perlman. Sid. I forget if she's actually in cahoots with the Empire at that point, but
yeah, I just like it because I think it just makes not everyone's aligned with Palpatine, but they're still evil in their own little ways.
Sure.
And then again, I like the idea of villain on villain battle. That's why I like the Maul arc and the Son of Dathomir comic, where it's like Mother Talzin is trying to take on Palpatine. She's not good either, but it's just like dark side on dark side who gets to be the top evil person.
Yeah. The Night Sisters, they're a third faction.
It's true. That
third faction.
Yeah, Night Sisters. I mean, Night Sisters are interesting too. Mother Talzin, she she was respectful with the Jedi. When they came over, she wasn't like, Jedi, kill them. It's like, no, Obi-Wan, Anakin had their tea, and Obi-Wan was trying to be diplomatic. They weren't at war with each other.
Yep.
Although I guess Knights now are aligned with Thrawn. So, although for how long, I have a feeling they're going to turn on him.
I was also Marin,
True,
who's
Marin.
clearly a hero in those stories. So,
well, yeah, and then the whole their culture thing, and they have their sisterhood. So
yeah,
it's not something I think that should just be destroyed automatically.
right. They're victims of this tragedy,
right.
Too. So
Yeah. So yeah. That's just something I think. I hope that's why I hope we get the Adventures show, because I feel like I want to explore more of those third elements than beyond just Empire and Rebels, which we got a little bit in Bad Batch, and obviously with the Clone Rebels and stuff like that. So I think it's fun. I think it gives the galaxy flavor.
Yeah, that's what's interesting with the Dark Times is there's no Jedi. So that's the thing I've always found fascinating about the Dark Times, right? There's no Jedi. So what do Jedi survivors do? What do as Balin calls Ezra Boken Jedi, right? Force users who maybe trained in the Jedi tradition. What do they do? Where are they tempted by? What does Ventress do? Now that she's come closer to the light, but also like Chelly, has this chaotic aspect to her character. Yeah. Fascinating question. And what does that mean for our purer heroes? What does that mean? What will that mean for Omega? What will that mean for Ahsoka if we see her?
Yeah. Yeah, and just to kind of wrap up with one final point, I think Star Wars, in terms of its heroes and villains, I think I would love to draw like a little scale, like a little this the two polar opposites, it's like the political ideology thing of left right. And then I would have it where it's like you have on the far right here we have the Emperor, ultimate evil. And then you move a little bit, and here's Snoke a little bit. There's Vader, and then kind of more in the middle, but still kind of there's Jod. And then in the hero light side, I would put Saw and Luthen, just they barely make it, but I would
it's an
still put
incredibly
there.
partisan way of putting this, but
There, and then Mom a little more here, and then Luke, Qui-Gon probably over here from the far, in Rey over there. So
spectrums.
Yeah, but yeah, and I hope as Star Wars makes more villains, I hope we get both a variety of the archetype of villain, be it Darksider, Mega Corporation, pirate, gang member, whatever. But also let's try and mix up the humanity a bit. Let's have some humanized villains in power. That doesn't make them good. That doesn't. It just makes them nuanced and interesting as characters. And yeah, I think Star Wars is allowed to have your emperors and your Jods.
Yeah.
So there you
Mask
go.
of Fear, for example, a really great example of a lot of complexity. I'm thinking, who's the villain in that story? I guess it's the Empire.
Yeah. I mean, Moth Vader's there, and he's still kind of a.
Yeah, I guess, but yeah, it's a good question. So, but yeah, I don't think that is a good place to wrap things up. Are we good to wrap things up? Yeah. So yeah, thanks for everyone for joining us. Do let us know what you think of villains. Should they be more humanized? Should they be more simple, mustache twirly? Let us know what you thought of our conversation tonight. Comment below in the boxes. They ain't go anywhere. Please do give this video a like and a share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Get back to the plugs at the top. Joel, great conversation as always. Thanks for leading us through. We are hitting to the 2-hour mark. I wasn't sure, but we always have stuff to say. Of me of little faith. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID20234 on Twitter. On Blue Sky. JID20234 on Blue Sky. And of course, most of the time, I'm on the Star Wars Underworld Discord. So be up there.
Yes, and yeah, check out the episode night. Call it movie night. Episode night on Friday. It's 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern.
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
we're gonna see the last 2 episodes of Andor.
There we go. Yes, check that out. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at MENUG1138 and Instagram beaches.foodie. I need to post something. Forgot about posting stuff. Also Twitter NEUG45. Yeah, I'm also in the Discord there. Check that out. Of course, Ion Ken on Blue Sky, Ion Cannon Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads as well. Of course, at the SWU. Remember the Tractor Beam Comics Reviews this Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Talking about Fear of the Jedi #2, Rise of Skywalker #2, and
Nice.
going back to Ariadu, Insider Short number 230. There, also, of course, check out Ash's panel. Senator, I can speak. Senator Rebel Chancellor, who is Mon Mothma. That is Friday, April 18th at 4 p.m. local time, Japan time, on the fan stage. If you are going to Celebration, if not, we will let you know where the video is on YouTube. Also, where our Taylor Swift panel is on YouTube. That is in the works, getting that up on YouTube as well. But yeah, next week coming back here. I forgot to write down what we're talking about next week, so I'll let you remind me, Joel.
Next week, we are talking about the road to rebellion
Yes.
as we look over all the various stories from mostly in the Dark Times to that lead up to the grand unification of the rebellion and all those threads that we have seen along the way.
There we go. So yes, now I remember. Please do join us again this next Monday. Yeah, same Space Wizard time, same Space Wizard channel here on the Underworld YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Iron Cannon Twitch, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern next Monday night. But until then, Joel, let's blow this thing and head home.